Father, as I go into this meeting this evening, I still myself before you. Help me to listen before speaking. Help me to value and appreciate the ones that in attendance in this meeting tonight. May your spirit guide me. May your grace abound in me. As we gather here this evening, we thank you for this opportunity to represent the beloved citizens of Nacogdoches. We ask that you strengthen us, restore us, and fill us with your peace. Father, as you have entrusted us as your stewards for this beautiful city, please guide our hearts and mind as we make our decision. Fill our conversation with your grace and truth. Fill this meeting with your presence. We seek you first in all we do together. Father, we thank you for everyone gathered here this evening. This is my prayer. Amen.
So I would now like to call the meeting of February 18th, 2020 to order. And first we have community recognition. Thank you. And I would like to ask Coach Humphreys and her team to join me up here, please. Yeah, you all come on up and just sort of bunch up over here and then you come right here with me, if you don't mind. Okay, so today we are honoring the SFA volleyball team. You all have had some extraordinary wins, haven't you? And you've had a good time, haven't you? Okay, I'm going to read just a little bit of this. An outstanding season with a 31-2 overall record, finishing with an RPI of 3, which is your highest ever out of 336 Division I programs. For the first time in our school's history, received votes in the top 25 poll and got as high as number 26. Our Lady Jacks also hold a third consecutive Southland Conference title, had their second consecutive undefeated regular season, and a first-time back-to-back appearance in the NCAA tournament. That is outstanding. That is great. And then it talks a little bit about some of your players, which I'm going to let you do in just a moment. But I have a feeling you don't talk about yourself very much. And so, well, you are a very big, important part of this. Coach Debbie Humphreys has compiled a highly impressive record of 694 to 339, making her one of the only 14 active NCAA Division I coaches with 690 or more wins. Humphreys has coached 82 All-Southland Conference selections, 6 Southland Players of the Year honorees, 6 Southland Freshman of the Year picks, 4 Setter of the Year choices, and each of the first 4 Southland, is it Libero, of the Year awards that the conference began in 2004. Debbie Humphreys is one of the nation's top NCAA Division I volleyball coaches through her 31 seasons in charge of the Lady Jacks, and aren't we lucky to have her here? Absolutely, of course. Now, tell me a little bit, if you don't mind, about some of your outstanding players and some of the outstanding things that happened.
Well, we had, there were a lot of great things. We had a lot of players receive individual recognition. One of them here with us tonight, Taya Mitchell. Come on up to, this is Taya. Taya came to us from Tyler Junior College, and we were real excited. So it was her first semester with us in the fall. And she was an all-conference selection and named Newcomer of the Year in the conference. So that was really exciting for us. We had a couple of players who they're not here this evening. They're seniors and they're moving on and getting ready. One of them's getting ready to go to med school in Ann Hollis, who was an all-region and an all-conference selection. We have a couple other seniors who are playing beach right now. So our brand new beach program in Zaria Williams and Corinne Evans. Corinne was an all-conference selection and was MVP of the Southland Conference tournament. And then with us, we also have Maddie Miller, who got here as fast as she could. She transferred a year ago into SFA, and she was an all-conference selection, and in the minds of all of us standing up here, should have been the conference libero of the year. So we're real excited about those individual accomplishments. But I think the special thing about this group is that they don't get caught up on those individual accomplishments. We preach team, we believe in team, we understand that there are gonna be people who have their name in the newspaper and, you know, things like that all the time, but you can't get those people, the hitters getting kills can't do it without the setters. And the setters can't do it without the passers. So it is a true team effort anytime any one of our individuals is recognized.
Well, that's great. Well, we have a couple of things for you. These are miniature bricks reminiscent of the brick streets of Nacogdoches. I have one for you as coach, and then we have one for the team.
Great.
And
Thank
they
you.
are given as reminders of a city who is very grateful that you all have chosen to play here, and you live in our community, and that you continue coaching here.
The city of Nacogdoches has been wonderful to us. If you have been out to Shelton Gym this year, it is a packed house every single night. The community, the SFA and the Nacogdoches communities have supported this program. It's a fun atmosphere. If you have not had an opportunity to get out, I would encourage you next fall to take advantage of that, because it's loud, it's exciting. You really can't hear yourself think while you're in there, but it's a lot of fun, and it's a very unique atmosphere that's created over in Shelton Gym. So we're not playing in Johnson Coliseum, but in Shelton Gym, it's a smaller volleyball-only venue, and these girls make it a lot of fun to be there.
Wow, well, that's great. Well, congratulations again. We're going to take a picture with the whole council, so if some of you may need to get down, I'm not sure, and I'll ask council to come down.
That's our missing ball we were looking for. We found it.
Squeeze in. Okay, great. Congratulations again.
Thank you very
so
much.
And thank you for all that coming in. So many good things in Nacogdoches. This is so much fun. We have, no one signed up for open forum tonight, okay? So we will move on to our consent agenda, and if council would like to remove something for discussion or questions, and if not, Chair would entertain a motion for approval.
I'll make a motion, we pass the consent agenda as it's written.
Moved and seconded that we approve the consent agenda as presented. If no discussion, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion passes. The first item on our regular agenda is a public hearing. Consider ordinance of the City of Nacogdoches, Texas, amending boundaries of a zoning district within the City of Nacogdoches. And I will let Elena Chafin explain a little bit more of that. So welcome and good evening.
Thank you. Good evening, Council. Elena Chafin, Planning Director. Tonight's request is to rezone approximately 2.5 acres from B2 General Business to R4 Multifamily, located on the northeast corner of Wedgwood Street and Murray Street. The property is currently vacant, and if the rezoning is approved, the applicant doesn't intend to develop the property with duplexes. The abutting properties are zoned B2 General Business to the north. To the east, properties are zoned B2 General Business and R4 Multifamily. Properties to the south are also zoned R4 Multifamily and B2 General Business, and then properties to the west across Wedgwood Street are zoned B2 General Business. The area does include a mix of uses as indicated on your screen. To the north, you'll find multifamily development as well as a daycare center. To the east is a counseling center. To the south is a mix of multifamily structures and single-family development, and then to the west across Wedgwood Street is general business, office, things of that nature. The majority of the commercial activity is concentrated along the west side of Wedgwood Street. They take primary access to North University, with Wedgwood serving as a service access, and then the majority of the residential development is located on the east side of Wedgwood. The comprehensive plan does identify this area as commercial, although there is some single-family and multifamily land use identified in the area. And although the property is designated as commercial, staff finds that the development still meets the goals and objectives and policies of the comprehensive plan, specifically in regards to the goal of inward growth or infill development, which is appropriate in areas to achieve an efficient, diverse, and balanced pattern of land uses. Specifically, some of the targeted objectives of this goal is to encourage infill development where appropriate, so places where utilities already exist, planning for a mix or separation of land uses based on type and desired location and pattern of development, and then again promoting growth where compatible with adjacent developments and utilities and existing streets and such already in place. The rezoning request is an infill development and does ensure a balance of uses and provides a variety of housing types to serve the residents of Nacogdoches. And so in that regard, staff does find that the request is in compliance with the comprehensive plan. Per the FEMA floodplain map, there is a small area in the northwest corner of the property that has some FEMA regulated floodplain. Any new construction will be regulated by our floodplain ordinance, which requires all new construction to be 1 foot above the base flood elevation. As a reminder, when reviewing requests to rezone property, there's a criteria and conditions for approval that the council has to satisfy. These include compatibility with adjacent land uses, providing for the orderly growth and development of surrounding property, adequate infrastructure such as utilities, roads, and drainage, the design of drives, parking, the prevention of nuisances, lighting and sufficient landscaping, and the proposed use being again in accordance with the comprehensive plan. We did send out 18 property owner notices to surrounding property owners. We did get a phone call with just general questions at the Planning and Zoning Commission on February 10th. We had a couple of property owners come out and speak. One property owner that owns the fourplex directly across from Murray Street did come out and speak came out and spoke in support of the request. We had a property owner of one of the attorney offices across the street who had concerns about potential additional foot traffic in the area, specifically with concerns for security. And then there was a property owner who owns a fourplex just a couple of lots down and just had general questions about the type of development, if it was going to be affordable housing versus market rate, and there was some discussion back and forth about that. The Planning and Zoning Commission did recommend approval 4-0, and I'm available for questions. The applicant is also available if you have any questions.
Okay, thank you. Since this is a public hearing, is there anyone here that would like to speak against this development? Anyone here want to speak for? Yes, sir, go ahead. How are you doing, Mr. Wright?
Very good. Good evening, everybody. My name is Sam Wright. I'm the builder and owner of the property. My general idea for that lot was actually to have a small gated community fairly close to the downtown area. So we're not planning on putting any parking on the streets or allowing people to park there. In fact, I think all the way along Wedgwood there is no parking signs anyway. Part of my reason for rezoning it from B2 to R4 is actually to reduce the population density on it, because as a B2 zoned lot, we can, just like the property just up the road, put multifamily, fourplex or sixplex or something like that on there. And one of my plans was actually, as a backup, was to do 2 sixplex units, in which case I wouldn't have to rezone at all, and we could all just carry on going. But my plan is actually to do something a little different, spread people out a little more, and try not to have that spilling over into any of the streets, and yeah, just make use of that land there.
Okay. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Is there anyone else that wants to speak for the zoning change? Okay, public hearing is now closed. Council, any questions or comments for Ms. Chapin or Mr. Wright?
Well, just, I guess, a comment about there was no objections from any of the notices that went out, correct?
Correct.
There may have been a concern about the foot traffic, et cetera.
Yes, prior to the meeting, we had a phone call with just general questions about what's being proposed. Then at the meeting itself, we had a mixed group, so general questions, opposition and support. And then the Planning and Zoning Commission recommended approval unanimously, 4-0.
And that was probably in the beginning that it was going to be duplexes and not gated community?
Correct. It's staff's understanding that the development has always been intended to develop as duplexes. Now, whether it's gated or not, staff, that hasn't been proposed yet, but they could do that.
And that's in regard to foot traffic going to water park, et cetera?
Some other recreational or retail uses in the proximity.
Thank you.
Do you remember by any chance the nature of the opposition at the planning and zoning?
Yes, the gentleman actually owns one of the attorney offices just on the other side of Wedgewood and was concerned about the potential for additional foot traffic in the area, specifically in regards to security.
Okay.
Okay, if not, thank you very much. Chair would entertain a motion if someone would like to make one.
Make a motion to pass agenda item number 6.
Second?
Moved and seconded that we approve agenda item number 6 as it is presented. If there's no further discussion, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion passes. Number 7, receive annual Nacogdoches Police Department contact report. And Chief Seavey, good evening.
Mayor and Council, good evening. I'm here this evening to talk about our annual contact report, most commonly known as the racial profiling report. Before I get into the slides, I would like to point out just a few things. One, that our police department is still part of the recognition program as administered by the Texas Police Chiefs Association. Texas Police Chiefs Association recognition program has a second series of checks and balances that we have to satisfy that organization on this same exact topic. The only difference is that we get examined by outside agencies who come in and look at our work and look at what we're doing, and we have to pass that inspection also. Secondly, our agency is examined by a private entity, Del Carmen and Associates, who has probably been the leader in this state in agency reporting for this particular law. And Del Carmen has been conducting inspections of our agency for several years now. I thought it was important to get an outside look from the private world perspective. So this report that you should have a copy of, I think you got a thumb drive, at least that. And so you have a complete copy of the Del Carmen report, 73 pages long, I believe it is. And I'm going to keep this to read to my grandkids at night when they can't sleep well. And so it will live on. Third, I checked today, and we still have forms in our lobby if someone wants to file a complaint or a compliment. Our website still has a complaint compliment tab on it. I tried it, it works. We also have our phone numbers posted in a number of different areas, including my office line that comes direct to me. Those are all current. They're all over the place, easy to access. You can also, and I'll talk a little bit more about how you can make complaints or compliments, but there are ample ways to get in contact with the police department, either personally or through a third party or anonymously. So as I'd also like to point out that in addition to this report, which is mandatory, we also have a complete training report that shows all of our training, including racial profiling, file training, use of force training, communication training, interpersonal communications, and things like that. We have a use of force, not just a report, it's an analysis where we go back and we review every officer's use of force throughout the whole year. And each one is reviewed by my training sergeant, who then looks at law and policy, makes sure everything is in compliance with that. And if there's any question whatsoever, it goes to a use of force committee made up of supervisors who then review and make recommendations based on the results of the original training recommendation. And then finally, even pursuits. We have a complete pursuit report for every pursuit that we get into. At the end of a pursuit, you never know what's going to happen. People are running from you for a reason. Sometimes it's just because they're scared. Sometimes it's because they're running from another crime. But sometimes a pursuit can get people cranked up a little bit. So we want to look at the reasons that we pursue people, what the results are at the end of the day. All of these are submitted to the Texas Police Chiefs Association. They go through a review there. And this is part of how we keep our recognition status. We will be inspected next year, I believe 2021, and we are one of the few agencies that's maintained this status for 3 consecutive sessions in a row. We were the 24th agency in the entire state to be recognized. There are about 150 now. There are over 2,000 law enforcement agencies. So we're part of a very, very small group that has achieved recognition and maintained it and still go through it, still adhere to it to this day. So in your report, you'll notice that there are a variety of standards that have to be maintained. The law was established in 2001, and Code of Criminal Procedure will give you as much detail on that as you wish to, and it prohibits officers from engaging in racial profiling based on the following races and ethnicities, which are listed on the slide. The law was established to bring attention to racial profiling or other types of bias-based policing. Under Standard 2, we refer to stops. If a person is stopped, that's referred to as a contact. So an officer who conducts a stop or contact of the car or a person on foot has to collect the following information: physical description, reason for the stop, if a search was conducted by consent, if contraband was discovered, or if there is a probable cause search. Those are the requirements under Standard 2. Also, if an arrest was made, the location of the stop, and was a citation or a warning issued. Standard number 3, it requires that all the information that we gather in accordance with the law under the Code of Criminal Procedure 2132 and 2133. It also requires under 2134 that an analysis be conducted. We refer to this as Tier 1 and Tier 2 data, where Tier 1 is traffic stop and Tier 2 is pedestrian stop. This is the data that we send to Del Carmen, and Del Carmen does that analysis for us, gives us feedback, and it turns into a pretty significant back and forth exchange of information as we prepare this report for the prior year. Standard 4 deals with video, recordings, retention, which is 90 days, and the fact that if an officer is complained on, we have to provide the officer with a copy of the video. All of our patrol cars have video and audio. All of our officers have body cameras, and I am very, very, very happy about that, because so often people don't remember what happened. And if you get 4 witnesses to 1 traffic accident, you get 4 versions of what actually happened. So with the video and the audio, and it's a very, very high quality, you really get a good, accurate picture of exactly what happened, because whenever a person is stopped on a traffic stop or a pedestrian stop by a police officer, they're nervous. I'm nervous. I was coming through a little town, Ratcliffe, the other day, saw a highway patrolman coming at me. I'm in uniform, I'm in a police car, and I stomped on the brake. So we understand that people are under stress when they come into contact with law enforcement. These recordings are exactly what we need to make sure that everything that we say that we do, we actually indeed do that. Standards 5 and 6. these are standards that five deals with agencies that don't have recording equipment, and six deals with exempt agencies. Now, how can that happen? Well, an agency can say that we don't do traffic, we don't work traffic, we don't stop people. What kind of agencies might that be? Well, it could be a constable's office that serves civil papers or something like that, and they don't conduct routine traffic stops or subject stops. Standard 7, this refers to citations, forms, or electronic citations. We have both electronic and paper citations. They are in full compliance with the law. They gather every piece of information that we are supposed to gather, plus a little bit more. And the only reason we have paper citations is because we don't have enough ticket writers to put in every cart. So if an officer is off duty, or if they're working an extra job, they now have a paper citation rather than having to call an officer over with an electronic ticket writer. So that's where we're at with that. In your copy of the Del Carmen report, should you choose to read it, you have the Texas Law on Racial Profiling, Transportation Code, the Sandra Bland Act, and the full report with the full analysis, and the final conclusion is all within your report. As far as demographics go, I guess until next year, we'll be using the 2010 census again, 32,996 on the total population. The racial ethnic breakdown, these ethnicities and races are dictated to us by the state legislature. So what you see is what we are required to report on specifically by name. This entire report, when I'm finished this evening, you're going to see very little variance from year to year to year. We tend to stay very stable in the content of the report, in the number of people that we contact, and how we deal with them. So we can go get into those numbers a little bit right now. Table 1, citations and warnings. They're broken down by race and ethnicity. The first column is the race and ethnicity. The second column is all motor vehicle contacts. Under that second large column, you have two smaller columns, and that is the actual raw number, which is, should have worn my glasses, over 10,000. Thank you. Over 10,000 stops. And then in the second small column under all motor vehicle contacts is the percent of that total. Tickets or citations, again, the raw number in the first column and the percent of the total in the second column. Same thing with verbal warnings and with written warnings. Motor vehicle searches and arrests. Pretty much the same thing. You have the race and ethnicity on the left side, and then all the columns. The first one represents second large column, represents searches. Third, consensual searches, and fourth, custody arrest. And they're broken down in the same manner that citations were broken down. So this is what I'd like you to know about this. This is a report of numbers. And that's really all it is. These numbers don't list probable cause. They don't list traffic violations. They don't list calls for service. They don't list people who wave us down in the street, things like that. These are raw numbers. We can make a lot of sense out of some of these, but the numbers that you find in this report do not possess enough detail to make a whole lot of conclusions from. I believe that what the state really wants us to do with this report, they want us to be aware of what our people are doing, they want us to take a look at what our people are doing, and they want to give the public an avenue to address concerns or to speak about the report or whatever it is that's on their mind. So it's really good for that. It's not so good to say, why is this that way or that way? Because to do that, we'd have to take every report, and we'd have to look at the reason behind the stop, at the motive behind the stop, and the circumstances leading up to. And one of the primary I think, ways to take a look at this. We have the slide showing right now is about vehicle contacts. And again, 47% white, 32% black, 18% Hispanic, and it goes down from there. And then it's households with access to vehicles. And all that's important to know because it has to do with households who have access to a motor vehicle to drive on the street. So it gives you a little snapshot of that. But the next slide, I think, is the slide that I like to explain to people because it asks the question, how many times did the officer know the race of the individual before they made the stop? That statement is just a little bit misleading because a lot of times if you're running radar, for instance, and a car is speeding and you lock it in, it's 2-3 blocks away, sometimes more. It really should read more about, did they know the ethnicity or the race of the person at the time they made the decision to make the stop? And I think it helps a little bit to understand that circumstance because we do a lot of traffic stops, and some people have said in the past, well, I can't believe that you can't tell who's driving that car. Well, at night you can't, I guarantee it. In the daytime, was the decision made 2, 3, 4 blocks down the road? Or did you get a vehicle description, in which case you're going to stop that vehicle that matches that description or the person that has already been given to you? So about 1,217 out of 8,958 traffic stops, the officer knew who they were stopping only about 14% of the time. Well, one component of profiling of any kind, whether it's race, gender, or based on criminal characteristics, is that you saw the person and then made the decision. Well, only about 86% of the time, 14% of the time, you can do that because we already know they know 14% of the time what person they're stopping to some certain extent. 86% of the time, officers have no idea who they're stopping until they actually get them stopped or have made that decision to make the stop. So that's why I think that number is particularly important. Racial profiling complaints in 2019, we had one. The complaint was withdrawn by the complainant before the complaint was fully investigated. I cannot tell you why they withdrew. I know that an offer was made for them to come in and look at the video and be interviewed, and they declined that. Didn't want to look at the video and did not want to go through an interview, so they withdrew the complaint prior to its full investigation. But it was assigned out, and we did try to work it through, and we'll continue to do so. So, how are complaints received? Well, you can come in person to the police department, and in the lobby, as I looked today, because I didn't want to lie to you, there are forms in the lobby. You can compliment an employee, or you can file a complaint on an employee. That's your choice. You can file a complaint over the phone. You can file a complaint electronically by email or even by text message. You can pick up that form in the lobby. You can speak to any employee of the police department. Everybody that comes to work for the police department goes through an orientation with me. Nobody else. I speak to every single employee that comes in to work for us. And I speak to them before they are allowed to work outside of the building, usually within the first couple of days of their employee. And I tell them that if any individual wants to file a complaint on any employee of the police department, you have one obligation, and that is to get a supervisor over there right now, period, to handle that complaint. Don't tell them to call internal affairs. Don't tell them to call Monday morning. Don't tell them to do anything except please be patient. We'll have someone with you right now. You don't have to leave and come back. We're going to try to make this as easy as we possibly can. Every person in that building has heard me say that. And that's how we operate. I don't like for people to have to walk away wondering what's going to happen. And so we try to handle that immediately. If all else fails, I'll meet you. I'll meet you at your house. I will meet you and we'll drink tea at Newk's or McDonald's or anywhere else. I'll meet you at a restaurant. I'll meet you in a park. And I will talk to you personally, one-on-one, about your complaint. And if I need to, I will handle it myself. I used to be an internal affairs guy a long time ago, and I know how to work complaints very well. It's not something that you lose. So if I need to, in particular, if it's something that is particularly egregious, then yeah, I will take care of that myself. And you may bring a witness. You may bring a friend. You may bring an advocate. You might bring a lawyer. You can bring anybody you want. You might want to bring your spouse, a parent. You can bring anybody you want. We're not going to tell you, no, you can't come in. As a matter of fact, I'm more interested in getting information from you, whatever you think you can provide. If you're not comfortable with speaking with me or an investigator, I will assign a different investigator. If that still doesn't work and you still want to make some sort of a complaint, I'll call another law enforcement agency. I have a Texas Ranger that lives in my neighborhood. I'll go bang on his door at 3 o'clock in the morning if that's what I need to do. But you will be given the opportunity to speak with someone. And I also tell people, and I'll throw all 5 of you under the bus, if you don't want to talk to anybody in law enforcement at all, call the mayor, call your city council person, and talk to them. And then we'll move forward from there. What can you expect from an investigation? Well, there's going to be an interview. Have to have that in order to get information. And you will be asked to sign a formal statement or a formal complaint. We do, it's state law. I mean, you have to sign a complaint and the officer has to be notified. There is one exception, and that is if by notifying the officer, it will jeopardize the quality of the investigation, in which case I have to write a letter saying why I'm doing it, sign it, give it to our investigator. But in all other cases, at some point in time, there has to be a complaint signed and sworn to. So you'll be asked to sign a formal statement or a complaint. The complaint will be assigned to an investigator or a supervisor. Any witnesses will be interviewed. We'll pull video, we'll pull audio, we'll pull radio traffic, we'll pull paper, whatever we need to. We'll pull everything that's related to that incident for review. Ultimately, a finding will be made. Those findings are exonerated, unfounded, not sustained, or sustained. Exonerated means, yes, it did happen, and it needed to happen. Whatever interaction you had with the officer was necessary and lawful. Unfounded means that we can't find evidence that it happened. It just didn't happen. And we get those where someone will call in and make an accusation. We'll pull the video on it. We had one happen just downtown the other day, and the guy reported that this officer just treated him just 10 different kinds of bad. And we pulled the video, and they had a very cordial, very friendly conversation about parking laws downtown. And it was nothing, and the whole thing was recorded. So occasionally those things happen. Not often, fortunately. Not sustained. It's the one I hate the most. Did it happen? Did it not happen? Can't tell. All I can tell you is that I can't tell you whether you're right or whether the officer is right. Those are the unhappy ones where everybody goes home without a resolution. And those rarely happen, but they occasionally do. And then sustained. A sustained finding means that the employee did what you said they did, it was wrong, and then from that point on, we take corrective action. Corrective action can include anything from being called on a carpet all the way up to termination. And when we take that corrective action, we will put it in writing, we'll put the finding in writing, and the complaining party will be notified in writing about the result of the investigation. Finally, any major investigations, we refer those to a state agency, typically the Rangers. If it's a serious use of force, officer-involved shooting, any allegation of criminal activity, anything like that, we shut everything down, put that employee on administrative leave, call in an outside agency to investigate them. And that is all part of policy, and we follow that to a T. this is where my mistake obviously comes in. I forgot to make 2018, 2019, my fault. Upon examination, Del Carmen Consulting, LLC, finds that the Nacogdoches Police Department is compliant with state law and has shown a history of compliance. My personal philosophy on this, we don't need officers so bad that we hire or retain bad officers. We're 8 short right now. We've gone through 3 test cycles and we haven't got one single applicant that made the cut yet. I'm not going to hire people and then worry about them. We're going to hire good quality people, and we're going to continue to pursue applicants as long as they can make the cut. We're good to go. It's in the best interest of our community and our police department to recruit, hire, and retain only the best applicants and employees. One bad employee is too much. If you want to know anything else, you want to meet, there's my direct office line. Happy to visit with anybody anytime. We currently have a Citizens Police Academy going right now. It filled up quickly. We had to turn people away. In the future, we already have plans to conduct a CPA for SFA students only, and we are going to work on conducting a CPA for high school students also, just kind of an outreach within the schools in the city, and within the SFA community also. And I teach at SFA, have for 11 years, minus a semester here and there. And it's a great recruiting tool for me. There are lots of people that I met in CJ 101 class that work for us right now. And unfortunately, many of them have gone on. And so we want to get SFA more involved, and we want to develop some relationships and friendships within that community. And then, if you have any questions, happy to try to answer them.
First of all, is there any comment from the public about the presentation? Okay, hearing none. Council, questions? Go ahead.
Softball ones for you, Chief.
All right, I love them.
But first, thank you for everything that you do for Nacogdoches, and I commend you. I read the anti-racial profiling written policy that you have, and I commend you for that. My questions have to do mostly with the purpose of the study of the report. So basically, you guys provide the raw numbers to this consulting firm,
Right.
and they crunch them, come up with percentages, and make sure you're in compliance, and then give you recommendations.
Right.
Right? Do you remember what the recommendations were last year?
They were the same as this year, that we're fully compliant, and all the things we just talked about
Okay.
are continuing on.
Okay.
There's that history.
That, it was hard to tell based on the language that they used, whether they were actually recommending that you do something different. It seemed more, since it said continue to do X, Y, and Z, it seemed more like, keep up the good work.
And
Is
and
that-
that
is
is,
that right?
that is indeed exactly right.
Okay,
Yes.
okay. I saw one of the things that said, one of the recommendations was, gather additional evidence or like reasons for probable cause searches. Is that something that you guys do already too?
Well, we do it, but it's in the form of affidavits and reports.
Okay, so
So
it's not,
it's a mandatory, as you well know, a mandatory part of any offense that's filed. But we do actually keep separate statements of probable cause. And that's a tool that we also use to train our younger, newer officers, because it's a probable cause versus reasonable suspicion is such a gray area for a lot of people. So, yes, we review those. Supervisors have to review every single report, every single arrest, every single affidavit before it moves on. That's part of our records management system.
okay, but those aren't raw, I mean, I guess there's no way to raw number quantifiably hand
I
it
wish
over.
there was. I think
Right.
it'd be very interesting, but we would literally have to, me and you and all the rest of you, we'd have to meet up about every day and read through those reports and find those statements of probable cause.
Okay.
And if anybody ever comes up with a way to do it, it would be an interesting thing. But right now, and we have a very powerful CAD RMS system. It's used across the nation. And I'm not aware of any records management system that gathers data on pure probable cause.
Okay. And then just the last question for you. I know that you are a very steady but also very dynamic police chief, and that you improve where you see that you need improvement. My question to you is, do you find, or is this collecting this data at all useful to you?
Boy, I hate for the governor to hear me say this, but this report will not allow you to draw any good, hard, solid conclusions. It's a report of numbers. Right. And what you make of it is what you make of it. So, in my opinion, I think I said a version of this early on, and that is that what this report does is it draws your attention to the actual daily activities that your officers are doing. And it has put some processes in place that allow us to focus on those activities. My supervisors actively review video of their officers interacting with the public. They're required to do that. No complaint is required. It's a supervisor's duty to do that. Things come out of this report that I think may or may not have come along without direction from the legislatures. Things like the community outreaches that we do. I think, I don't have the numbers for 2019 yet, but 57 individual after-hours weekend events that we attended. And that's not including the birthday parties that an officer rolls up on. You can watch them dance on YouTube, play basketball on YouTube if you like. Doesn't include things like that. But I think the Citizens Police Academy is a good thing. NAC 101, Leadership NAC, we get deeply involved in those. Well, that involvement, along with this report, has shown us sometimes where we might need to make some specific outreach. And that's where the idea about SFA and about high school kids, a CPA for them, that came out of sitting back and talking about these things. So every year this report comes out, and we have these little command staff meetings where all the supervisors gather up, and we talk about what do we need to do, what areas do we need to go into, and fortunately we don't have a permanent city manager yet. So sometimes I go out and I give an organization a purchase card, and I say, everybody on patrol today, I want you to go to this place and I want you to participate. And if they're selling chicken legs or sandwiches or hamburgers or whatever, I want you to go over there and I want you to participate. Well, I remember when I was a little baby cop, probably just about that tall, I didn't always have $10 to spend on a barbecue plate. So we use part of our community outreach funding, and I send officers and I pay for them to go there and have food and interact. There's going to be one coming up in March from a group of SFA students. Already got that handled. It's already a done deal. So we do things like that. Try to look for unusual ways to involve ourselves in the community. And you can ask my wife. She's sitting right back there. She goes with me to a lot of these things, and she brings a perspective that I can't. Fortunately, I can't. And but she brings that perspective to the community, and people in our community will walk up to me, and then they'll look around me and talk to her. And I think that's important. I encourage the spouses of our employees to get involved, and I think it shows a human side. And we are here to become a part of the community, not apart from the community. So always looking for ways to get involved, and we're pretty successful in it most of the time.
I love the outreach you do, and I really like the idea of the CPA for the high school and the SFA students, because everybody and their dog has an iPhone or a Droid or whatever, and they watch TV and they see the statistical circumstances that happen. And so that sells, so it's going to be on the news. And so the assumption is that happens all the time. And so the way you really break that down, in my opinion, is you let the public know who these people are individually. They're normal humans just like the rest of us. And so I think that's a fantastic idea, especially at the high school level. Goodness gracious, I would think that would lower barriers and fears that are unnecessary.
That is the goal. That is absolutely the goal. It's not because we don't have anything to do on a Tuesday night.
That's right.
So,
Fair enough.
Chief, I've taken Citizen Police Academy, and I enjoyed every moment of it, especially since it's not just one day, and you spend quite a bit of time with the other officers, and I have a lot of respect for them. One of the things that threw me off, both Councilman Amelia and you stated about probable cause,
right.
that's not part of this data. And the reason why I asked that question is when you have 246 searches and you have 81 consensual searches, the other 140 something searches that was done without consent,
Right.
where does that come from?
Well, there is a search that is connected with an arrest.
Right.
And so there are a lot of those when people are arrested. There are probable cause searches because an officer can walk up to a vehicle or to a person, and through observation, training, and experience, when you're in a vehicle, there's a thing called the vehicle exception. That's what we call it. And that's where if you don't do something immediately, evidence can be either removed or destroyed. So we have that ability to conduct a search without a warrant, but based on probable cause. And the probable cause statement will go in to the judge, and at some point that probable cause will be reviewed. And then there are a lot of consent searches. People just say, sure, take a look. And I don't know if I can't think, do you think I've missed anything as far as searches go? I don't think so. I think that's about it.
And I just understood exactly what you just told me. But that is probable cause could be on the other 140-something searches, correct? So that data is part of this.
Yes, yeah,
Okay.
I think that's correct.
Right, but it's the probable cause, yes or no, versus what the probable cause reason was, which is not reported on, if
Right.
I understand it correctly. I
Oh,
think that's
yeah, the
difference.
reason why.
The
but
actual, like,
actually,
right.
Yeah, I can tell you that we searched X number of people based on probable cause. What I can't tell you is what was that probable cause, how can we break
No,
it down?
no, I wasn't
Yeah.
looking for that.
Oh,
No.
good. Thank you.
Okay. Anything else?
No, I'm good.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
And congratulations.
Thank you.
It's a good report. Agenda item number 8, city council work session to discuss redevelopment. Councilmember Anderson.
Well, I'm revisiting this topic relatively briefly tonight because I met with our interim city manager and our new planning director, and thankfully Ms. Chafin has a lot more experience than I do on this topic, and has worked on some of these types of initiatives in other communities. And her expertise is going to be absolutely critical in doing this, because when I sort of launched into this idea, I having never done it before, did not realize the extent to which it was going to consume time and effort and sort of late nights researching how other communities have done these sorts of things, and so I'm trying to put together a very sort of carefully done and thorough template effectively that can be used not only in sort of what I'm sort of referring to as pilot area, but in other neighborhoods. And I have I have learned a lot, and I've learned a lot about how little I know about doing these sorts of initiatives and all of the elements involved, because you want, you want input from law enforcement, you want input from a wide variety of people in the designated neighborhoods. There are things like signage to consider. I've considered sort of designating the area similarly to the way that Pecan Orchard is, just with the secondary sign on street sign poles and things like that. And I want to make sure that that can be done without any unusual cost to the city in the process. So you've got to work on ways to raise funds, and how do you do that, and do you need to set up a nonprofit to manage those funds and that sort of thing. So it is more complex than I realized it would be when I started on all of this, but I'm working my way through it, and I think Ms. Chafin is going to be a tremendous help on that, since she has a lot of information on how grant money can be used and the different types of grants that are available for doing this. And we're referring to it as redevelopment. That, to me, is my view of redevelopment. It's almost a misleading term. It's really a revitalization. This is, what I want to do is not regentrification of a neighborhood. It is the idea is to solidify what I think are in a lot of cases neglected neighborhoods, and bring stability back to those areas on a lot of levels. But if Ms. Chafin has any information tonight, I would definitely welcome any of that. I don't know if you're prepared with any input for this evening.
Let me interrupt just real
Go ahead.
quick. You can go ahead and come up, but before she begins, is there any public comment on this topic before we go any further? No? Okay. Ms. Chafin, please go ahead.
Yes, hi. I don't have any information prepared for you this evening. We did cover lots of different models that we could pursue as far as providing additional information on programs and initiatives that other cities are doing in similarly situated areas. And so I think based upon recommendation from council, we can go back, conduct that research, and then present some additional findings and give you some examples of things that are done in other cities. And then we can get to the weeds of a specific model if you want to, and upon direction of council.
Well, I must say, I'm very impressed with the idea of us being very thoughtful about this, because it's a very exciting proposal that you have come up with. So,
Well, thank you. It has, as I said, it has ended up being a lot more complex, a lot more layers than I had originally anticipated. But the input that I've gotten from talking to both staff and to a large degree stakeholders in the neighborhood that I'm trying to work with, which is my own in this case. And it has, with each bit of information, it's opened sort of another avenue that I feel I need to explore to be thorough. So I think having some help in direction with that from Ms. Chafin is going to be hugely helpful.
Comments?
Mayor and Council, I
Oh.
just would ask you, at the end of this discussion, I'd appreciate some direction from you all about the staff moving forward with these studies, and just come back with a report. I'd like to have some direction, please.
Okay, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was gonna ask. I'm gonna make you walk back and forth. I think that this is awesome, and it's really exciting. When you hear the words revitalization or redevelopment of neighborhoods, it sounds great, but they seem like very vague, kind of abstract terms. I know you said that there are certain, different models and different communities that have done this. Could you give me like a concrete example?
Sure. I'll just speak to my most recent experience in College Station. And so College Station has a department called Neighborhood Services, and they do a lot of education for neighborhoods. They do a lot of how to be a good neighbor for the students who live in these residential areas. They also facilitate grant funding for neighborhood beautification. That can include street signs, landscaping. They also have a community services department that manages and facilitates funding for CDBG grants, which is Community Development Block Group grants. And those are used for rehabilitation of homes. They can even be used for acquisition and demolition of dilapidated or abandoned housing. They can be used for sidewalk construction, street repaving. And so there's a lot of available funding to kind of do some of the things that I think Councilman Anderson is interested in. And we can present those to you and give you some more information. And so there's just a couple of examples.
I would love to give that kind of direction.
Okay. Anyone else? Questions? Why don't you tell us what type of things that you feel would be a next step in addition to what Councilman Fisher has requested, but tell us, because you have had this experience, what would be good next steps for us?
I think the next step is to, upon the direction of council and the city manager's office, to go back and do that research and bring back some high-level examples and not get too much in the weeds about any one thing. And then if the council decides that there's a couple of project types that they're interested in, then we can come back with more information on those in particular. So that way we're not getting too involved in any one thing, and I think we can talk about pros and cons and what requires additional staff versus what we can do in-house today, what might require additional funding, and kind of put it in that aspect as far as these are things that are implementable today versus things that may need additional budgeting or additional staff time or things of that nature. And so put it in that context. But I'd like to go back, do the research, come back and just bring you a couple of high-level items, and then if you're interested in those, then we can come back and provide more information.
Are the grants specific neighborhoods, or, I mean, can you do one neighborhood, move to another? Or you could do maybe 2 neighborhoods at a time?
Yeah, the Neighborhood Services Grant is open, the one in College Station is open to any neighborhood. So any neighborhood can apply for it. There is an application, and there's it's very competitive. It's like a contest. So it's limited funds, and so these neighborhoods really have to come together and put together a really nice application. The community services CDBG grants are specifically for low to moderate income neighborhoods. And these areas are identified by HUD through a mapping system. And so any funding for those projects are much more regulated. There's a lot more reporting. There's more strings attached. There's usually some sort of like 5-year action plan that you have to submit. And those are restricted to areas that have the effect of revitalizing and improving the lives of people in low to moderate income areas. And so they're 2 different programs with 2 very different goals. And so it's important to look at what kind of funding we want and what we can use it for, because some funding is much more flexible in how you can use it, and some funding has a lot more restrictions and reporting and compliance, and we can talk about all those things when we come back.
HUD could determine neighborhoods as low-income or so, whatever, but would they determine which neighborhood you would do first? Or?
No, that is based on, usually it's based on a community engagement program where you conduct surveys, you gather information from the community, and you usually get a list of priorities from that and say, here's our areas that are in the most need, here's the top priority, and then you list those and provide a report that says how you're going to address those concerns and things of that nature.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Anything else?
If everybody's comfortable with providing direction to staff to do a little further research on this, then I assume that's
With the
what
way
we're
she
looking
had
for
explained
here.
it.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Everyone okay
Yeah,
with that?
I'm good.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate
Thank you
it.
very much.
Okay. Agenda item number 9, consider the city council work session topic selection for the future work sessions, which would be next month. You want me to go ahead and just? Okay. Since we're in this we had talked about this last time, we're in this city manager search, and that's taking a lot of our time during executive session. And for the time being, we would visit one topic. And next week, at the end of the month, Ms. Philpott and I have an appointment at the Capitol with our legislators, talking about issues that are going to be coming up in the next legislative session that have to do with cities. And so if we can get our lobbyist, Kelly Barnes, to come, and then Ms. Philpott and I would be also available for comments or questions. And let's get an update on that visit, and that might be something that you would be very interested in knowing what's going on that's going to affect our cities.
Yes,
Is
absolutely.
there someone that has something else that might be, you might feel is more pressing?
I think it's a great idea.
Okay, great. Well, then we will consider that for the next topic, and you will contact Mr. Barnes? Okay, that sounds great. It is now, I can't tell, 7:35? 6:35. It's 6:35 PM. The council is now going into executive session, and we will be back shortly.
get these started, because it does take a minute for them.
You like stop by the gym, say
Is it 7:15?
Yep.
I have 7:16. Your mics are on, just so you know.
Thank you.
I thought you might be interested.
Yeah, me either.
7:17.
It is 7:17 PM. We have returned from executive session. No action was taken, so that concludes our meeting of February 18th, 2020.